Is there a chance that Gronk could be back in 2022? Things are starting to sound a little optimistic on that front. And the Buccaneers have been speaking with multiple players of interest at the combine, as they should. But what do we make of these prospects that have had some meetings with the Buccaneers? Finally, let's take a look at the biggest positions of interest ahead of their scouting combine workouts. Let's go.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bucs Nation, and welcome to the Locked On Bucs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And we thank you for making us your first listen or view every day. I am James Yarcho, joined by my phenomenal co-host, David Harrison. Both of us cover your Tampa Bay Buccaneers for SB Nation's Bucs Nation. When we aren't here, when we aren't there, we are on the Twitter sphere at JYarcho_Bucs, at DHarrison82, at Locked On Bucs, and at Bucs_Nation.
Thanks again, Bucs Nation, for making us your first listen or view of the day. And James, big news starting off, coming from the scouting combine, but also coming from the Advent Health Training Facility, is free agent tight end to be, because he's technically not a free agent yet. Rob Gronkowski has been working out at the Buccaneers facility multiple times a week since the season ended, that coming from head coach Bruce Arians, which obviously, James, means that Rob Gronkowski is going to re-sign with the Buccaneers.
Absolutely, and he's going to play quarterback. He is going to Gronk spike the ball all the way down the field. It is kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's reassuring. Encouraging. There's another one, that there could still be some interest there for Gronk to return to the Buccaneers, regardless of the quarterback situation. And as Evan and I talked about on Wednesday, we might be looking at a Buccaneers team that essentially punts on the 2022 season to bring these guys back, guys like Godwin and Jensen and Kappa and Gronk, because then they can readdress the quarterback situation the following offseason and already have a championship caliber roster still locked and loaded, ready to go. So I don't know, maybe Gronk is just utilizing the facility while he's still technically part of the team and taking advantage of that opportunity, or maybe he doesn't want to go to a Planet Fitness in Tampa. I'm not sure, but seems to me that if somebody didn't have any interest in returning to a team, he wouldn't be utilizing their facility to get workouts in and to do the things that Gronk is doing. Now, the other big news that came out about number 87 is that for the second offseason in a row now, the Buffalo Bills are interested in trying to acquire Gronk's services. And that was something that we talked about before, that if Gronk was going to play for another team that didn't have Tom Brady at quarterback, we kind of felt like it was going to be his hometown team, his childhood team, the Buffalo Bills, who are championship contenders already.
Yeah, I mean, that Gronk grew up painfully knowing that his NFL team had been close to winning championships a whole lot of times, but never actually got their hands on a Lombardi. And I mean, the kid and everybody would love to kind of go and right those wrongs. So the opportunity for him to go to Buffalo, team up with Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and whoever else is playing for them would certainly be an attractive one. Go over there, win a championship with them, and finally bring his hometown a Super Bowl trophy. And literally the Super Bowl parade is his last act as an NFL player. I mean, honestly, it's a storybook ending that anybody would want to have. But yeah, I mean, if you're just completely discounting or just, poo-pooing aside the franchise you came from, you're not going to be in the facility multiple times a week working out. This is a guy who can find several locations to work out if he really needs to, but, don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill either. Gerald McCoy was also working out at the Buccaneers facility his last offseason as a Buccaneer, and we knew pretty early on that his future was not going to be with Tampa, yet he was still in the facility working out on a fairly regular basis. So don't connect too many dots there, but it is encouraging, at least the fact that Gronk is still around. And listen, once Tom Brady, officially announces that he's actually not retiring, Gronk is probably going to come back anyway.
I find a lot of people like clinging to that hope that Tom Brady is somehow not retired. Like, it's been a topic of conversation now on multiple platforms for multiple people. And I'm just like, give it up. The dream is dead.
Yeah.
It's over. They got a ring out of it. Tom Brady's moving on.
As long as Tom Brady is an active player, and I said this on yesterday's episode, as long as Tom Brady is an active player, which he is, he's still an active player. And as long as Tom Brady himself refuses to definitively state that he is not coming back for the 2022 NFL season, I am going to continue to champion those who cling to the hope. But I, too, agree that I do not think Tom Brady is actually. But listen, we have to talk about it. It is news. Look, like it or not, it is news. It is obviously relevant to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So anytime he's asked about his future and he's he's non-decisive. I'll put it as non-committal, but I'll say more non-decisive than non-committal because I think he commits to whatever he is. So whatever he does, I just don't think maybe the decision has actually been solidified as much as we would like to think that it potentially has. He could just be having fun with us. You know what I mean? And listen, I'm all for it. Like, if he's just having fun, look, I'll continue giving you your reactions, buddy, so that you keep having fun with it because I enjoy the conversation, Gene. But you know me, I'm a hype guy. Like, every time the Buccaneers, fans got hyped about the Bucs fans or the Buccaneers teams with Dirk Cutter and James Winston, I support the hype. So if you have the dream that Tom Brady's coming back, I support your dream, and I will continue to be here for you as long as James Yarcho continues to dash on all your hopes and dreams. Speaking of hopes and dreams, James, the Buccaneers are talking to a lot of rookies at various positions who have hopes and dreams of becoming the next Tom Brady at their position if they're not quarterback. Most of them are on offense. Most of the people that the Buccaneers are confirmed to have talked to in Indianapolis are on offense, which is interesting. I'd be willing to put money on the fact that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are not just going to draft offensive players. And if I were going to do so, betonline.net is where I'd go to find my favorite props along with those this draft season, because football might be over on the field, but there's plenty of action going on around the NFL. Basketball is still in action on the court, both pro and college hoops, still going strong from your latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired head coach is going to land. BetOnline.net is your number one spot for all your sports betting needs this year. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net has your hockey, boxing, and UFC odds and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks again, Bucs fans, for making us your first listen or your first view every single day. Make sure you're also following the Locked On NFL podcast. Locked On experts covering the big stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Locked On Bucs podcast, David Harrison, James Yarcho, at DHarrison82, at JYarcho_Bucs, a show at Locked On Bucs. BucsNation.com is where we work. That's on Twitter at Bucs_Nation. James, meetings and conversations happening at the Combine between a lot of people. No illegal tampering is happening. That's not just a Netflix documentary. It's true. But the Buccaneers are talking to a lot of amateur football players about to become professional football players. And let's start the list off. Let's start in the trenches here. Who are we hearing that the Buccaneers are meeting with?
Zion Johnson out of Boston College, the offensive lineman. He did have a formal meeting with the Buccaneers. And I love that, David, when we were talking about offensive linemen we would like to see drafted, I had Zion on my list. And I think he would be a huge boost to this offensive line. It would cost them their first round pick. There's no question about that. If the Bucs are going to get Zion, it's going to be in the first round. But I love the fact that they're having a formal meeting with him because that's a guy you need to be interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, big guy at Boston College said specifically he would love the opportunity to replace a guy like Ali Marpet. And that's kind of competitive nature you want. Not just a guy who's looking to be a part of a team, but a guy who understands the shoes that he's filling and is ready to fill those shoes to rise up to that challenge. And like you said, it would be a first-round pick. I think the last mock draft we got from Locked On NFL Draft guys, Ryan Tracy and Eric Crocker, I think they had Zion going like 19 or 20, so a little bit ahead of where the Buccaneers are going. But with all the talented receivers, defensive backs, some quarterbacks, you never know. Some quarterbacks get taken off the board, and that pushes the rest of these guys down. Interior offensive linemen, not typically a premium position in the NFL draft, so you could see a guy like Zion Johnson fall. And look, don't put it past Jason Light and the Buccaneers. If he's at 22, 23, maybe the Bucs pull the trigger on a trade and move up to go get their guy. Interestingly, along with Johnson, the Buccaneers have also talked to Dylan Parham, my guy out of Memphis. Played guard, played center, both at the Senior Bowl. Again, a young guy, kind of still learning the position. Definitely not a day one guy, maybe a day two guy, but still an interesting piece. And obviously the Buccaneers doing their homework up and down the draft board on offensive line. They're also doing their homework on wide receivers. So it's good to know that not just out here, but even the Buccaneers themselves understand the importance of having a stacked wide receiver room. Chris Olave, Ohio State Buckeye star, has had an official meeting, a formal meeting rather, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That is going to be a big get if they can get him. And look, James, Chris Olave started off the draft season like top 10, top 12 in a lot of mock drafts. Now he's kind of sliding down into that late 20s, not because he himself is hurting his stock, but because there are so many other players, edge rushers like Jermaine Johnson come to mind, Andrew Booth Jr. out of Clemson comes to mind, the quarterback that are moving up the board, that he's just kind of naturally falling down because he's just one of many wide receivers with first-round grades in a lot of classes. Might be the number 1 or number 2, but in this class, with as top-heavy as it is, maybe the number 4 or the number 5 guy, which is huge. And, of course, you also know I've got to throw my support behind Tampa native Christian Watson from North Dakota State University coming on home to the Buccaneers if that happens.
Yeah, obviously, I love the fact that they've had a formal meeting with Olave. He told the media that, he thought the meeting went well and he would love to be part of that organization. Of course, he's going to say that about a lot of places. All these guys would love to be part of any organization because that means their dreams are coming true. But real quick, David, I thought about it. Let's say the Bucs bring back Chris Godwin. Then they draft Olave. So you have Evans, Godwin, and Olave. Does that make the trio their nickname would be Ego?
That's actually pretty good. I like that. And it's good because that trio can make any quarterback's ego feel really, really good. There's gonna be a lot of quarterbacks that make a lot of money off of those three and go somewhere else. And all of a sudden people are like, wait a second, this guy's not as talented as we thought he was. What happened to the 5,000 yards, 40 touchdowns every year? Oh, it was the wide receivers.
Yep, bingo. So yeah, obviously I'm going to be a huge fan of Olave getting some face time with the Buccaneers, but now we have to move to another position of need on the offensive side of the ball. And the Buccaneers have had meetings with Dalvin's little brother, James Cook, who we have talked about on this podcast. He also says that he is faster than his brother. So that would be a fun race to watch. And then your boy, Rachaad White, he also met with the Buccaneers. So we know there's heavy interest in offensive line, heavy interest in wide receivers, heavy interest in running backs. And I like both of these guys. Now, I haven't seen anything about whether or not they met with my guy, the person that I'm putting my stamp on, but that doesn't mean that it hasn't happened. It just means maybe we haven't heard about it yet. But I think
they're too smart for that.
Hey, if I am going to put bias aside and talk about how good some of these Buckeyes are, you can respect Haskins.
Yes, Haskins is good. He's much better than the other Haskins that came into the NFL recently.
There we go. All right, we're back on track. But yeah, I mean, I think both Cook and Rachaad White would be incredible fits for the Buccaneers offense. So again, it was nice to see that they're meeting with those guys and starting to get a little bit of information and rapport with them.
Yeah, I mean, two great guys that you could add to the roster, and I would love to see either one of them. Obviously, Rachaad White, I've got some personal bias there, an Arizona State guy like myself. But James Cook, you can't deny that the talent and the ability there, and adding him to the running back room would be just as valuable as well. And talking about meeting with a lot of people and doing a lot of homework, tight ends. I mean, pretty much all of them, James. I think like pretty much every tight end in the NFL draft has met with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So pretty safe to say if you're going out there looking for prop bets and there's one available for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers drafting a tight end, not sure what round, but just drafting a tight end in general, take that bet. I mean, I would feel comfortable taking that bet is what I will tell you. So interviewing a lot of tight ends, and it makes sense. I mean, OJ Howard, we've heard pretty much nothing about him potentially coming back. The assumption long before the end of the season was that he would be leaving. I know there are some Bucs fans. I think Manny from Atmore regularly threw his support behind OJ. Look, I still think OJ has untapped talent and potential. I actually was talking to our boss, Ross Jackson, and look, the Saints bring back Jameis. They may also bring in OJ. Brace yourself for that potential. That is something that may happen. But I don't think he's coming back to Tampa. Obviously, you have Cam Brate. We'll see what Rob Gronkowski decides to do. But even if Rob comes back, you talk about building for the future. Rob is a 1 or 2 year guy, I think, at most, depending on what he decides to do. So no matter what, the Buccaneers have a very real reason to look at tight ends this year. And this is a very, very talented group. You could find a starting caliber tight end down the 2 or 3 years down the road in pretty much every day of the NFL draft this year.
Yeah, well, and of course they met with your guy Jeremy Ruckert from Ohio State, and then Trey McBride, who is basically the top tight end in the draft. So
No.
you're still looking at high draft capital for some of these tight ends. Is that something that they're going to do? I mean, I'm with you 100%. They will come away from this draft with a tight end, but is it going to be a Trey McBride type tight end, or is it going to be someone that's going to kind of fill in behind Cameron Braid, and Braid is going to be back at being the tight end one there, or as we talked about earlier, maybe it is Gronk that comes back. But we know that these are all positions of desperate need for the Buccaneers. There's no depth at tight end. There's no running backs, and you have no depth at wide receiver with Chris Godwin potentially on the way out. Now it's been reported that a deal is going to be done and he's not going anywhere, but they weren't as deep at wide receiver as we thought. So all of these players, all of these positions make a ton of sense, and we know they're going to talk to dozens more players over the course of the weekend. But I'm very much intrigued and excited by some of the names I've seen connected to the Buccaneers early on in the combine process.
Yeah, and just to keep in mind, like, we haven't talked to defensive players yet. You know what I mean? Like, the defensive players haven't really taken the podium yet. So, like, the whole slant towards the offensive side of the ball is just because until you get to ask these guys who they've spoken to, who they've had formals with, you don't know. And the defense always goes last. So that's why you're getting this offensive slat early in the combine process. When we come back next week, we'll have a lot more information on the defensive players, and we'll be able to talk about some of those things.
I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say there's probably going to be about 8 to 10 corners that are about to have some formals and informals with the Buccaneers when we find out about those. But look, we've seen the hecticness of what goes on in Indianapolis, and these players are being, basically herded around from podium to podium, from room to room, from station to station. And I hope that these future NFL players are getting a moment to rejuvenate and refuel. I don't know, maybe reach in your pocket and pull out a Built Bar on their way to speak with more coaches and more media members, and especially if they have some access to the Puffs, because the Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they are a treat. They are covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are going to be a huge fan favorite with some incredible flavors like yummy cinnamony churro. You got coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. These are going to be your favorites. All Built Bars, including the Puffs, are covered in 100% real chocolate. They're low calorie, high protein. You can replace candy bars with Built Bars. Have yourself a nice treat, but it's also good for you. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. And for the OGs, you have flavors like mint brownie, coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream. There's something for everyone. Go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off your order. Again, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Wrapping things up here on a Friday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. James Yarcho, David Harrison on Twitter at @JYarcho_Bucs, at DHarrison82. And all week long, you guys have been answering the question of the week. Who is your all-time favorite NFL player to never suit up for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? David is very excited about the results. He's so excited he's knocking things over on his desk. If you don't watch on YouTube, go to YouTube and watch the reaction that David just had when something fell over, because that was outstanding. So we do have one more voicemail that we are going to get to, but first, we are going to talk about combine props. You guys know we love our prop bets here on this show. So I'm going to rattle off some prop bets. David is going to give his reaction. He's going to live bet these right here on the show. And by live bet, I mean he's going to say what he would bet, not that he's actually literally hitting the bet button. But David, let's start off with everybody's favorite. The 40-yard dash. Is the fastest 40-yard dash going to be over or under 4.29 seconds?
It's going to be over. I don't think we have any 4.2 guys in this group. I think we got a lot of 4.3 guys. I think it's going to be a very impressive group because I think you're going to see a lot of 4.3, sub 4.35 guys. but I don't think we have anybody that's going to run in the 4.2s.
I'll take the under just because I don't want to agree with you on all of these. And
Gotcha.
I have a feeling that I'm going to agree with you on most of them. So we're going to start things off by disagreeing here. I'll take under 4.29. I will come on this show and celebrate a 4.28 because I can. What is the position of the player that runs the fastest 40 at this year's combine? Corner is sitting at minus 110. So the heavy favorite there. Wide receiver at plus 140, running back at plus 300. What are you thinking here, David?
I think it's going to be wide receiver. I think it's going to be a tight competition. I wouldn't be surprised if it's cornerback. I don't think it'll be running back. I think I'm looking at John Dotson, and I know he's not kind of like expected to be the fastest guy. Gray out of SMU is expected to be the fastest guy, but I mean, John Dotson, he opted out of the Senior Bowl. He didn't perform there. So this is kind of his first opportunity to really show people what he's got. And I think he's looking to make a splash.
Yeah, I always kind of default to wide receiver. And I think wide receiver will ultimately end up being the fastest 40 time of this combine. So again, you see, we've agreed continuously now. I'm glad I went against you to open things up. Yeah. What about Aiden Hutchinson? Press reps over under 38.
Probably under, and I think people are going to make way too much about it. I don't care about the bench press. Like the bench press to me just isn't what it used to be. But at one point in time, this game was a lot more just who's the most physical, who's the best player, who's the best athlete, and all that stuff. But it's not anymore. And today's game, a lot of it has to do with technique. A lot of it has to do with how you set yourself up, how you anticipate, and how you prepare. And I think that's where Aiden Hutchinson kind of shines. And I feel like he's probably going to come in under, and people are going to make a bigger deal of it. We'll see Aiden start slipping to like the fifth pick overall, or maybe even like within the top 5 to 10 picks as an overreaction. But at the end of the day, he's going to go top 3.
I hope that he only does 2 reps and he slides all the way to 27.
That's not going to happen.
But I will take the over. Drake London, wide receiver, who said he models his game after Mike Evans. 40-yard dash time over under 4.48.
First of all, Drake London has no choice but to model his game after Mike Evans because he looks like Mike Evans. Like if Drake Evans came, I was like, I model my game after Travis Benjamin. Bro, are you crazy? Go do something else. All right. But that's a good person to model your game after. If he was a little bit older, I would have said like Keenan Allen. But because of how young he is, Mike Evans is kind of the prototypical big, long wide receiver who doesn't have speed and can't separate, and that's who Drake London is. Doesn't have speed, doesn't really separate, but he's going to win with physicality. 4.48 is a good spot. I could see him coming in at like 4.45, 4.46, and if he does, I think he's going to rise up some boards a little bit. I think he's being a little over-projected in the mocks right now anyway, but I think in real time, in real NFL draft rooms, he'll probably rise up the boards if he can come in at 4.45 or under, and I think he'll come in under 4.48.
To wrap up our prop bets here, Rich Eisen. Yeah. Is he going to go over under 6.03?
I'm going under. I want Rich to run under. I mean, logic says he's going to go over, but
I would absolutely love to see Rich hit the under. He's going to hit the over.
Yeah. No, my last 2 picks are more emotional picks than science. Listen to the science though, if you're going to actually put money on it.
All right. Rapid fire session now here. David, quarterback, running back, and wide receiver that we are most looking forward to seeing on Thursday night, primetime drills. I will kick it over to you to start off that list.
Yeah, Malik has been the guy I've been keeping an eye on all draft season. I mean, honestly, I came into the Senior Bowl not expecting a whole lot. I was kind of expecting to be a little bit let down versus the hype, but actually all he did was impress, and he's continued to impress with his interviews. I really like the fact that this kid is going out there being honest with his abilities and his projection to the NFL with people. And I think it's a really strong testament to what he is mentally, or who he is mentally. And I think that that's going to bode well for him moving forward in his career. And then Rachaad White, a little bit because of the Arizona State bias, I will admit, but also because the dude's a baller. The dude he's a good player. He's a stud. I mean, these drills don't really accentuate what a running back does best anyway, but I do think he's going to stand out in the drills anyway. And then wide receiver George Pickens. This dude has been talking, James. Like, we're going to put his clips from the combine interviews on the show at some point next week because he has been talking a very big game. I want to see if his play lives up to it.
Yeah, at quarterback, I'm all 3 of the guys that I'm picking are 3 places that I have been. So it's not really biased. It's just kind of a funny coincidence. But at quarterback, I'm going with a guy who led his team to the college football playoff undefeated. And I'm going with Desmond Ridder. This is a guy who's been criticized a lot. You know, he's overrated. He can't make these throws. You know, he got lucky. You know, he didn't play anybody, yada, yada, yada. I want to see how this kid does. I'm really interested to follow him into the NFL, see if he's able to turn into anything, because I think he got hated on a little bit too much at running back. My guy, Hassan Haskins out of Michigan. I'm excited to see him go through some of these drills. I loved watching him last year. I really, truly did. And I'm interested to follow him into the NFL. So I'd like to see how he stacks up in these drills against some of these other running backs. And then Olave. I tell people not to do it because you're only setting yourself up for disappointment. But my chips are all in on Olave for the Buccaneers. The thought of that trio, the trio, just really has me excited. Just the potential.
The trio, the quarterback heroes.
Yes. All right, our question of the week. Let's wrap things up with that. David, let's jump over to the voicemail line and get one more of our listeners on here saying who their all-time favorite player is to never play for the Buccaneers.
Hi, guys. JT from Texas. So the question of the week, who's your favorite NFL player that wasn't a Buccaneer? I would have to say Randy Moss. I liked a lot of them from that era. It's hard to beat the ones from your childhood. Go Bucs. Thanks for summing it up the other day. Y'all have a good one.
JT, thank you very much for the call. Great choice in Rainbow. We haven't had a bad choice this week. Even the deep cut of Wayne Corbett from Evan Klosky there at 10 Tampa Bay. And look, I've thought about it a lot. I was thinking about Emmitt Smith. I was thinking about LaDainian Tomlinson. I was thinking about Brett Favre. David, I got to go with Deion Sanders. The way Deion Sanders was able to lock down Michael Irvin, Jerry Rice, these Hall of Fame receivers through his career. I got to see him play baseball for the Cincinnati Reds when I was a kid. I loved Neon Deion. He was electric, and anytime he was on TV, you had to sit down and watch it. Deion Sanders is my pick.
That's funny, actually, because you pick a San Francisco 49ers player. And it just turns out that mine is also a San Francisco 49ers player. See, James, I duped you. You thought you knew who I was coming in here to say. My favorite player that ever played for the Buccaneers, honestly, is Ricky Running Waters. Yeah, Ricky Waters. I mean, honestly, it was his style. Like I just really dug the style. And again, I was younger, so I don't know. You know, there may have been some scandals in there. I've never really gone back to do homework on it. And I think it's one of those things, never get to know your heroes type of situations. But yeah, Ricky Running Waters, man, he's one of the guys that I remember distinctly, like years after he retired, I would create him on college games. I would create him in Madden and just remake and relive some of those memories. So even though I was never a Niners fan or an Eagles fan or anything like that, like he was just one of, I don't know why, he attracted me to his style.
And just to be clear, Dallas Deion was the best Deion.
Okay,
just saying.
I mean, all Deion is great. I mean, I don't have any argument over who the preference. Really, too legit. Deion is pretty legit too. I mean,
Baltimore Deion, we just forget that ever happened.
I didn't even know that was a thing. We blocked that. It's like Denver Broncos, Jerry Rice. What are you talking about? That never happened.
Exactly. There it is. All right. Our new question of the week for all of you: quarterbacks excluded. No picking quarterbacks. None. Zero. No exceptions.
Yeah.
Who is a player that you would trade for from another NFL roster this offseason? You want to go running back, you want to go offensive line, you want to get a corner. Who is it from any other roster would you trade for the Buccaneers that's not a quarterback? And just for fun, for those of you that send in your emails to lockedonbuckspodcast@gmail.com or give us a call at 813-444-5841, why don't you tell us what you'd give up for that player to get them on the Buccaneers? David, that is going to wrap things up for us on this episode. Thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view of the day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Once again, the email is lockedonbuckspodcast@gmail.com and the phone number is 813-444-5841. For one, check out everything David and I are doing over at BucsNation.com. Follow along on Twitter at LockedOnBucs, at JYarcho_Bucks, at DHarrison82, and at Bucs_Nation. Thank you all so much for joining us. Have a great day. Stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, be good to one another. We thank you so much for joining us right here at Locked On Bucs.